Blessing and honor to speak. Today, let's read from, and I like that you have his picture here. I was thinking of thank you. I think that would be very nice to have. And when I came, it was here. It was so nice. So let's see what we haven't read yet. Satisfied to serve as a stone in Vrindavan. Let's see what that says. Meditation 9. Satisfied to serve as a stone in Vrindavan. Sometimes we think of Krishna. Excuse me.
I'm changing the mic. It's better sound now.
I'm sorry, what?
There should be better sound. Can you
Oh, the sound?
Yeah.
Is that better? Sometimes we think of service to Krishna as only being possible in the human form of life. This can cause us to minimize how Krishna extends himself in many variegated ways to all species. He not only provides opportunities for each species to serve him in many ways, allowing them to receive benedictions, but he also personally incarnates in each species. There are many examples of entities and bodies other than human form who have received special mercy from the Lord, some of whom are surely worth mentioning. Ahalaya is an example of the body of a stone. The twin Yamala Juns and the seven Talas in the bodies of trees, King Nigra in the body of a lizard, Bharat Maharaj in the deer's body, Surabi in the cow's body, Gajendra in the elephant's body, Jambavan in the bear's body, and Angada and Sugriva in the bodies of monkeys. This is from the Jaiva Dharma 28. Perhaps the completion of my existence in material bodies in the material world will soon end, and I will be fortunate to return to the spiritual world to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. I must ask myself, am I qualified and ready for this service? While residing in human bodies, I have engaged in devotional service in many ways. I have been involved in making devotees and helping to maintain their devotional lives. I found unique means to bring people closer to Vaishnava's teachings. I cultivated them personally and tried to create communities that would provide a healthy environment for devotees to cultivate their Krishna consciousness. Perhaps the completion of my existence in material body in the material world will soon end, and I will be fortunate to return to the spiritual world to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. I must ask myself, am I qualified and ready for this service? While residing in human bodies, I have been responsible for the building of several temples and the establishment of several schools. In these facilities, people were able to come to worship and education. In the temples, the devotees and non-devotees could have darshan of the deities, hear transcendental discourses, attend festivals, visit or live there as a way to offer services, and have lots of good association. In the schools, devotees and non-devotee children could have opportunities while simultaneously learning academics incorporated with spiritual studies. Perhaps the completion of my existence in material body in the material world will soon end, and I will be fortunate to return to the spiritual world to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. I must ask myself, am I qualified and ready for this service? While residing in human bodies, I have been instrumental in establishing several farm communities. In these communities, we tried to emphasize simple living and high thinking. We explore self-sufficiency and try to create an atmosphere that emphasizes unity with diversity. We focused on how to properly address and balance spiritual and material needs. We also tried to prioritize the facilitation of women and children, and encourage everyone to make loving Vaishnava relationships the number one priority. Perhaps the completion of my existence in material bodies in this material world will soon end, and I will be fortunate to return to the spiritual world to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. I must ask myself, am I qualified and ready for this service? While residing in human bodies, I have established free clinics and outposts for distributing prasadam, spiritual foodstuffs. These facilities, which offer some of the most basic medical assistance and free food, had much more than just a humanitarian purpose. Such services are most important since we must maintain and care for the body. However, these facilities and programs address the whole person, body, mind, and soul. Perhaps the completion of my existence in the material body in the material world will soon end, and I will be fortunate to return to the spiritual world to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. I must ask myself, am I qualified and ready for this service? While residing in human bodies, I have been able to preach massively on the television and radio, and have also contacts with many world leaders. All around the world, I have preached through national television, radio, newspaper, addressing leadership, relationships, national building, and social degradation. I have offered ways to re-spiritualize our lives and solve material problems with spiritual solutions. I've also given workshops and seminars all around the world to devotees and non-devotee communities on these topics and many more. Perhaps the completion of my existence in this material body in the material world will soon end, and I will be fortunate to return to the spiritual world to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. I must ask myself, am I qualified and ready for this service? While residing in human bodies, I have distributed many of my spiritual master's books and have written and distributed thousands of my own books in many different languages. Devotees and non-devotees all around the world have been exposed to my style of writing and preaching. In these books, I have tried in my own little way to present ancient Vedic knowledge in a lively way to address contemporary issues and concerns. Perhaps the completion of my existence in the material body, in the material world, will soon end, and I will be fortunate to return to the spiritual world to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. I must ask myself, am I qualified and ready for this service? While residing in human bodies, I have nurtured many disciples in connection with all of these other various activities. All of these achievements and endeavors are noble but secondary. Now the real accomplishment depends on whether or not I have been a proper disciple. If so, I will be qualified and ready to serve in the spiritual world eternally, even as a divine slave. However, I will be just as enthused to serve as a resident of Vaikuntha or even as a servant in any of the other rasas in Vrindavan. I am that lowly beggar who will depart from these material bodies in the near future and who needs special mercy to become qualified, ready and satisfied to serve eternally as a stone in Vrindavan. Jai. That's the mood of the devotee, right? Is to always be ready for service. That's the main objective. That's why we chant so intensely. Krishna, please engage me in your devotional service. And but I wanted to share some thoughts on grief because actually the grieving process has already started, right? And this is kind of merciful in many ways because I know when Tamal Krishna left, it was really sudden and very shocking to many, many devotees. But as a community, we go through things together, and this helps us. We come together as a community not for some material benefit. There's so many material communities, right, in society. Society has like the Lions Club or this association, that association to promote economic development. We don't do that. We come for spiritual reasons. So many other places they come together for maybe political reasons, maybe even just gross sense gratification. But in this Sangha, this is Sadhu Sangha, that we come together and associate with each other. Because as one person comes in here and the next one comes in here, by speaking about Krishna, we all, and chanting Hare Krishna, we all raise our consciousness together, collectively. And it gives us enthusiasm to associate with devotees and go through the same things together. It gives us enthusiasm. It also strengthens our faith. And it helps us develop this higher Krishna consciousness. So processing grief, the word grief is interesting. Vaisheshek was saying in a lecture, he researched this. The word grief comes from the word guru. And that means heavy, right? Heavy on the heart, grief is. But grief is something that when Srila Prabhupada left, we did not have any real concept or understanding of how to deal with grief. And I think that was a big misfortune for all of us. Because grief has its own way of existing. And we see it even with animals. Just a few months back, I saw Mother Monkey. He was very little. He had died. And she was right out where they parked the cars, across from gate 3 at the temple. And she was there showing her dead baby to anybody who would look, as if to help me. Of course, for a poor animal, what can they understand, right? But, and we're not cold-hearted, even though we acknowledge that Krishna said to Arjuna, you are grieving for that which is not worthy, right? That's nuts. But at the same time, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, where over 600 million people died, he went and assisted the Pandavas in the grieving process. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, 8th chapter, in the very beginning, and how he went with them. They gathered water from the Ganges and they bathed. So this is an important process, this grieving. And it's not something that we can ignore. There's 6 different stages it talks about. The first stage is the denial. It's not really happening. It's not happening. That's the first thing we do. The next is anger. And then I think it's illusion. And then there's what's it called? Negotiation. That's where we say, well, I wish if I had did this differently or that differently, this wouldn't have happened. But no, this is beyond any of our control or any of our abilities. And so the last is acceptance. The last stage is accepting grief and accepting it. So it's not that we ever get over having that person in our lives. And in heaven, we don't want to, right? It's that we assimilate what that person brought to us. And it's like even with our parents. I've lost both my parents. But I'll often see, maybe I'm cooking pasta. I'll be doing it the same way my mother did it. And I'll think of her words. This is how we do it. And it is the same with Srila Prabhupada. You know, his instructions are there, and that's why we read so much, and that's why we have so many classes, and that's why we discuss these things so often, is to deepen this understanding of his instructions. And in this way, we become more and more appreciative. It was in one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance day in LA, and Srila Prabhupada, he came into the temple room and he put Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's picture on the Vyasasana and he offered arti. And then he sat down on the floor on some pillows and he started speaking. And he spoke about how he dedicated his life to his spiritual master. And at one point he started to cry. And when Srila Prabhupada started to cry, you couldn't stop from crying. You felt your throat tightened up and your heart started beating. And I couldn't see Prabhupada because the room was so full, but I just was hearing. And everyone started crying. But these weren't tears of sadness. These were tears of gratitude. Prabhupada was saying, he was so grateful that his spiritual master sent him all these boys and girls to help him in his service. And so that's part of the connection, that assimilating the grieving process, and just from doing the service for the spiritual master, that relationship actually deepens. It becomes more and more personal because the disciple is seeing the spiritual master's hand in his life continuously. And it's almost a competition. Not a competition, that's not the word. But there's a reciprocation. Whereas the disciple is trying to serve the spiritual master with so much love and so much dedication. And then he sees the spiritual master giving him so much facility and so much help and so much support. So this is the process of grief. And it's a big topic. It's a very big topic. But it's something that we don't get over. It's something that it just develops the relationship, especially a transcendental relationship, develops in a different way. And his presence doesn't fade or disappear, you know. And but it becomes stronger in the heart, and it becomes, we see the eternality of the relationship. So I pray that all of you are able to process all this in a very fulfilling way, in a very blessed way, a very spiritual way, to give you the support you need. And know, as a community, we are all going to feel his loss, definitely. As a society, would definitely feel a great loss. And but apparently, Srila Prabhupada felt it was better that he went somewhere else and did some service. He's called for some other service. But that doesn't mean it's not spiritual life. There's a different dimension that we don't have realization of because of our material conditioning. But there's a spiritual realm that is right here in front of us. It's that close. It's as close as our prayers. It's as close as our thoughts. That's close. So if we keep our spiritual master in our heart, in our thoughts, and we are always with him. Does anybody want to add anything or ask any questions?
Laura, thank you, by the way. It's nice words. Laura, concerning the text his
Yes, uh-huh.
I felt like there was like really a contrast between like being a stone and everything that he, like the enumeration of everything that he did, you know, as a human being. It's like, and asking himself if he's qualified. I thought, is it because, how do I say that? Like devotional service, we go a lot in actions, right? We do a lot of actions. But sometimes devotional service can be just like remembering Krishna and sit, you know? So like the stone, what does it mean? Why do we go all the time?
The stones, the creepers, the trees,
Yeah.
they are not engaged as much in devotional service as the other rasas. And their existence is just pleasing to Krishna. And it's not really, as when we read in the Nectar Devotion, it's not emphasized that much. It's more, emphasis is more on the dasa, sakha, vatsala, madhurya rasas. And Lord Chaitanya particularly emphasized madhurya ras. So this is a very humble position he's taking, extremely humble position. And it's not, generally in our line, it's not really what we focus on. It's just taking a position of just existing for the pleasure of the Lord. We want to be able to do something for the pleasure of the Lord in some relationship. And this, in the way he wrote it, was very beautiful because he was putting in contrast of all he accomplished in this material world, and it was quite a bit. And it's very significant. And he knew world leaders. He spoke on television. He was very renowned. You know, he was very erudite. And so compare that to being a stone in Vrindavan. Unless you're a devotee, you can't appreciate the fact that somebody who was doing all that could be satisfied just being a stone. But in Vrindavan, if you're a stone, you are satisfied. Whatever position you take in the spiritual sky, you will be completely satisfied. There's no hankering or lamenting. So you're completely satisfied. But it was very humble. It was very great contrast. And I think he was trying to emphasize the simplicity and beauty of the spiritual sky compared to all the material accomplishments one can attain here.
Yeah, but it wasn't material. It was service.
It was service, but on a
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
You using material facilities, but in that sense, if I can add, like I have a friend, devotee. She's a little elder, and she's been doing a lot of seva, so much seva, and like trying to want to control everything in the temple. I love her, but she's going through that, like now she's in a phase. It's a new phase of her life that she's stopped doing so much, and now she wants to go internally. And she's been telling me about that, like how her guru told her, maybe you should go more internal now.
Yeah.
She's gone so much, like doing so much work, deity worship, so many things, and all over the temple, all the time, non-stop, Now going internally. So I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, that's true, and that happens to a lot of the older devotees. I have a lot of friends who cry on my shoulder, basically. Oh, I'm not able to do all the service I used to do. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, this is time to go internal. Mm-hmm. Because being able to do service is a great blessing. But we could do service in the wrong mentality. If we're trying to control or there's so many things. Raghunath Das Goswami talks about it. And, fame, adoration, distinction, these things are really distractions. Mm. And so it's actually Krishna's mercy when he starts taking away different things. And that's what we have to develop, that faith eventually. Not even eventually, but as soon as possible. That whenever Krishna does take these things away, it's a blessing. It's a blessing because it is time. There's going to be a change. It's going to deepen our Krishna consciousness. That's what we want. We want to go back to Godhead. We don't want to take a material birth. Yes.
The text that we were reading made me think of the topic of worthiness. When we know our true position in the spiritual world, and we know where we are now, and our relation with Guru and all, it makes me feel like we should always feel like we're unworthy. Is that right?
Yeah, devotee does always feel unworthy. The more advanced a devotee becomes, the more unworthy, or the more humble they also become. So it's kind of a funny situation because they don't feel deserving, they don't feel worthy. But we understand from the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that even those people who come to Krishna consciousness for 4 material reasons, even those people are great, great sadhus. They're considered highest of all human beings. So what to say of somebody who's dedicated their life and has actually made some effort? What to say? What can we say? Yes, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is quite a dynamic personality. A friend of mine, he was in Atlanta. A friend of mine was telling me that one time he said, I need to go to Home Depot. I don't know if you know, Home Depot's a store that has all kinds of building supplies and home supplies. You go there if you need to build something or fix something. And he said, would you like to go with me, Maharaj? And so Maharaj said, yes. So then he said, I'm going tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock the next day, there he was, all dressed up in this outfit. It was like a hazmat suit or something. It was bright orange. It was like something that you'd wear on a construction site or something. So cute. I'm ready. He's so enthusiastic. It's such a happy, happy soul. But this Krishna, he has his plans. That this material world is just a place we pass through. And unfortunately, we all have to leave. There's no history of anyone staying. Yes, Prabhu?
Well, you mentioned, to see when Krishna takes away something as a blessing, how do we see, when someone dear to us, dear devotee is leaving, how do we see that as a blessing?
Yeah, it's a long way, huh? But we start with the little things, Yeah, when you can't find something, you've lost something. You lost so many, maybe you overpaid for something. Oh, Krishna took it. First acknowledge, we're helpless. We're helpless. We don't know everything all the time. We're going to make mistakes. So we're helpless. So we're gonna naturally lose things. But when we acknowledge that, Krishna must have wanted me to lose that for a reason. And so we start with little things and just accepting and not being attached. And it's in so many little ways. Maybe we didn't get a job we were particularly looking for. Krishna's mercy. I don't know why. Krishna explained to me. and then we'll eventually come to understand. Oh, Krishna had other plans. Something that was better suited for my spiritual life. Or maybe, something happened in which we were humbled. Thank you, in a situation, and we can see Krishna. Krishna, thank you. Immediately, thank you, because I was becoming proud. I was thinking that I was doing something. So he does that. He does that in very little subtle ways. And so we just keep acknowledging that this is his mercy. Everything that happens, it's not ordinary what happens to a devotee. It's not like what happens to a materialist. It may appear like the same thing is happening, but it's not at all. Because Krishna, he is taking complete control of the situation. And his desire is that we come back to him. He desires this more than we desire. And that in itself is like, wow. How can that be? But he does. Because he loves us. We can't even comprehend. And he has love for every living entity that, like we may like 30 people in this room, but then there's a few that we're just, But Krishna loves us all equally. He's not inclined to for one more than another. He's equally disposed to everyone. But there's some quality that every living entity has that Krishna really loves, and it's individual qualities. But anyway, yes, Prabhu.
How can you remain humble while you are in the position of leader? Because if you think yourself unworthy and like stoned, people wouldn't listen to you. So how do you?
It's by seeing ourselves as not the leader but the servant. We're the ones who make the arrangements for everyone else. If you're given a leadership position, don't think you're the leader. In spiritual life, you're actually the biggest servant. You're the biggest servant. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, they asked him, how many disciples do you have? He said 4. He said, how could that be when you've had thousands coming? He says, I have 2 arms, 2 legs. They'll do whatever I say. But he saw himself, and he would answer, when people would pay obeisance to him, he would say, I am your servant. And this, if we can get this mentality of actually being the servant, we're halfway home, This is even, especially in relationships, if we always see ourselves as a servant in a relationship with your husband, your wife, the wife is thinking, Krishna sent this person that I can serve. The husband is thinking, Krishna has sent me this person I can serve. And this way they can have a very happy relationship. Because they see the other person as Krishna's. And they are Krishna's servant to take care of this person. Yes.
Also, like this Gurudev has been, he has expressed that he would like to be in an intimate, rasa with Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. Maybe, it's a change of service, as I said. I just reflect on what you asked. And also for us, it's the opportunity to take more responsibilities, to be more, bigger servant, like you say. Maybe, to continue Maharaja's service around the world.
The gopis are, they're not seeing themselves as the boss. They're seeing themselves as servant. And they serve each other. They help each other. This relationship with devotees is really a training ground for our spiritual life and how we treat the other devotees. And that's why the grief process is be careful too. We didn't honor the grief when Prabhupada left. And so sometimes these anger issues will come out. depression will come out, different things come up because it wasn't, devotees didn't really give themselves a chance to grieve properly. And it's just that if we don't honor it, we don't process it properly, it will keep rising up. I had one very good therapist tell me, he says, make time to grieve. Whatever you need. Every day you could start with every day, just a little time to honor that person, just to acknowledge what they brought into your life, and whatever, spend some time doing that every day until the day comes when, okay, today. But of course, with the spiritual master, we do this every day. We do it 3 times a day, right? We start with the first thing in the morning, acknowledging what the spiritual master brought us, acknowledging his position is so elevated. He's a close associate with the gopis, with Radharani. He's personally serving Radha and Krishna. And then Guru Puja. Only a couple hours later, we're doing it again. We're thanking the spiritual master for bringing so much mercy into our life. I mean, even in Monday relationships, we grieve it, but for the spiritual master, it's an everyday process of gratitude and begging for his mercy. And it will continue to come. Nobody else has loved us more in this life. And nobody else will be able to love us more than the spiritual master. But yes, we want to desire to be the servant of the servant. And that's one of the things, that being the servant of the servant is very pleasing to Krishna, if we can get that attitude. Yes?
Thank you so much. Yes, Krishna takes away, huh? That's what you mentioned.
And speak a little louder, please.
Okay. You mentioned, for instance, Krishna takes away, huh? He takes away. And while we were mentioning that, I was thinking about, on the other hand, sometimes he also gives something, like I was talking to this when we got lunch, about Sridham, the poor stricken young friend who had, you all know the story, and the story of the broken rice. And he didn't ask for anything when he met Krishna. He went to Krishna's place, very poor. His wife said, you have to go to Krishna and get us something to eat. We are very poor. I have anything home. You have to go. No. But then, okay, ultimately, he went, taking some broken rice with him to give to Krishna. And once he arrived there, he didn't ask for anything. He didn't dare to. Krishna caught the broken rice and ate it like nectar. And still, he didn't ask what he was, what he went for, maybe money, something to eat. And when he went home, he didn't recognize his own hut anymore because it had become a palace. So, see, so Krishna, am I wrong? If what I was thinking about is Krishna gives, takes and he gives you something, even well, if you can handle it. If he thinks, not going, you're so humble, you will get false ego or become proud, and that you will handle it in my service. And then in that case, Krishna also gives.
Well, Vishwanath Chakravarti, he commented on this one.
Okay.
That Sudama Brahmana was a little proud about his power of renunciation.
Oh. Okay, that I didn't.
Yeah. But so Krishna, taught him how to use everything in Krishna's service. So that, and Srila Prabhupada emphasized that too with the devotees, is that we use things in Krishna's service. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was very adamant about that. He was the first guru who used motor cars and and the printing press. And why? But for spreading Krishna consciousness. So it's not like, Krishna, the danger is if we have material desires, Krishna will fulfill those desires, and they may distract us in our Krishna consciousness. So as a devotee, we don't go and pray for anything material. Because if Krishna doesn't give it to us, it could be a very good reason. It may be a big, huge distraction, causes so much difficulty. Our spiritual life will get railroaded, get distracted. So devotees, they pray to give up all the material desires. Janmana Sundarim. Lord Chaitanya prayed, I don't want beautiful women, I don't want a lot of followers, I just want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. So that's one thing where, as a devotee, we need to be really deeply introspective. What am I thinking about? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? What is my... And the thing of it is, if we have material desires, and we've seen this happen in the temple. Sometimes somebody will come and they'll work in the accounting department pretty soon. And then there's a problem. And there's been some really nice devotees who've gotten in trouble in different ways like that. So we have to be careful. And if we do have some material desires, we have to pray to give them up. And just tolerate it. Tolerate the material desires. Like the rivers flowing into the ocean. So many rivers are flowing in the ocean, but you don't see the ocean going up and down. It's just takes it. So we just give our desires to Krishna. Krishna, I desire this, but if it distracts my Krishna consciousness, please just take the desire away. I just want to serve you.
In the opposite, like when you have responsibilities, let's say like I'm a mother and I have to take care of my daughter, it's my duty, and I don't want just to give her up, it's my duty.
No.
So, but like I feel some kind of detachment of it, but at the same time I do want her to feel fulfilled as, with our relationship. I want to serve her properly. So I find it difficult sometimes to be fully involved with her, but at the same time being kind of detached because it's not really what I want. It's not the first thing I would like to do.
Don't worry. Your children will detach from you.
But that's what I've been told actually.
Yeah, you just love them and take care of them the best. That is, forget it. When they're teenagers, you'll. No, really, it's good to have attachment for your children because they do need special care and special attention, and you are taking care of one of Krishna's special devotees. Yeah. They're here at this age, in this association. They're not ordinary. Mm-hmm. They're not ordinary. I certainly didn't take birth in a Vaishnava family. Mm-hmm. This is a special personality. So this is a big responsibility you have from Krishna. So it's okay. That's okay. And again, they will teach you about detachment.
They're already.
You mentioned about giving up material desires. Can we channel our material desires towards our spiritual goals? Say, for example, if I desire to make say more money, I want more money, for example. So I still desire for more money, because when you have more money, preaching becomes a lot more easier. Like in today's day and age, people listen to you when you are at, when you're materially well-to-do. It just becomes easy to preach or whatever, This is just an example, but many other examples like that. So can we channel our material desires?
Well, it's interesting. Prabhupada had the similar thought. He thought that he would just make a lot of money and give it to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. But Krishna had a different plan. And slowly, and then this way and that way, even burning down his factory at one point. And then Prabhupada couldn't deny the fact that Krishna was keeping him from making a lot of money. So some people, Krishna gives them that ability. But to your question, yes, if you have some talent, some ability, and you use it in Krishna's service, then that becomes purified. And you become purified from that material desire. So it's very good to use your talents and abilities in Krishna's service. But be careful of becoming attached to the fruits, to the results. You do want to give the results to Krishna. That's the purifying process, is when you actually give the results to Krishna.
I guess Prabhupada mentioned dovetails. He often said you have to dovetail this.
Yes. Yes.
Transform
That's
this
yes.
material into a spiritual desire.
Mm-hmm.
Bhakti, you mentioned about the grieving process, and one of the things that comes up quite often is regret.
Ah,
So
good point.
as we go through grief, there's always this regret about, I should have done this, or I could have done that.
Yeah.
That comes up, and very often that regret can overwhelm.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we sit in an association like this, we share pastimes, particularly, there's also sometimes we get a tinge of almost like spiritual envy, that this person got to do that with my spiritual master and I didn't get to do that. So as we go, because that was also something that's going to come up. It's already come up in some ways as we share pastimes about Maharaj, that you got to do this and I didn't, and things like that. How do we deal with that on an individual perspective?
Okay, so there's
About
actually
regret?
two questions.
Spiritual envy.
Regret is part of the negotiation in the process of grief. And we have to be careful that we don't get locked into that. That's why going through the process is important. So don't get into regrets and guilt and depression. Because if we're getting stuck in there, we're not grieving properly. We're not giving ourselves time to grieve. But because that will happen, is that we may get stuck in depression or regrets. The thing of it is to live our life so that with every person is that we don't have regrets. We live our lives in such a way is that we treat every Vaishnava for who they are, very elevated personalities. And that, and so when it comes to our leaving this body, or that somebody else has left the body, we don't feel that, oh, I wish I did more for them. Because we already did as much as we could. And what is the most we can do for every living entity on this planet? What is that? What is it we can do individually that will benefit every living entity on this planet? Our loved ones? Huh? Become pure devotee. Yeah. Become pure devotee. And then we become a great benefactor for this planet. And to all our loved ones. There's not more we can do for our loved ones. We become a pure devotee. They're liberated. 7 generations, both directions. Maybe 21 in some cases, I'm not quite sure. But it's a lot. people we didn't even know. So that's what we can do. To really, but it's to your second question about the little envy. I don't know, what can I say? I think envy is there, but we have to understand, again, Krishna has put us in the right situation. Because when I look back, and I was a young devotee, there wasn't a lot I got to do for Srila Prabhupada. I made his yogurt. I made sandesh for him one time. I cleaned his room a couple times, you know. Not great amounts of personal service. But when I saw how many devotees who had really close, long-term personal relationship with Prabhupada leave. And then when I would see them, I said, oh, why aren't you coming? I already served. I did what I could. I couldn't feel envy for them. I felt sad for them. They didn't understand the concept of Vani Bapu. They only were attached to the Bapu, to the personal association. And so when it came time that there was only the Vani, they couldn't function. So there's no reason to be envy of anyone, because we all get what we need for our spiritual life. We all get what we need. And it helps if we feel envy for somebody, is to just see, oh, they're serving Krishna so nicely. Find a way to see, oh, look at how nicely they chant. Look at how nicely they play the drum. Look at how nicely they cook. You know, and appreciate their service. Like Radharani. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Hearing this point, it's quite scary. And one of the fears I have is that, how do we know? Like, I don't know. Am I touched the Vani or am I touched the Vapu? Because at this point they're both together. And when we're now approaching that test of true attachment to Vani or to Vani, then if we find ourselves falling short, what do we do?
Listen to the lectures. We're so fortunate in this age that we can listen to lectures anytime, any day. And they're all recorded. I'm sure you have a tape ministry somewhere that has everything. And listen to what he's saying. And learn what he's saying. Listen and memorize it. And then when those things come up in your life, you're like, oh yeah, my Gurudev said this. Oh yeah, my Gurudev said that. Also, what he's saying is the same thing Prabhupada said. There's no difference. They're one in that instruction. So when it's same thing with Srila Prabhupada, you just see these, you know what the instructions are. Your strength comes from following those instructions. Causeless mercy comes from the way you follow those instructions. The more serious you are and dedicated to chanting the holy name, stronger you become in spiritual life. It's imperceivable, but it's dynamic. Was there another question over here? No?
You mentioned about the process of grief. You said denial, anger, negotiation, and acceptance. Was there anything else?
Let's see. There's anger. Huh?
Delusion.
Delusion. Yeah, delusion.
It's at the end.
No, the end is the acceptance. Yeah.
So delusion is
like
after denial.
Denial was first. Then there's the anger, and then there's the delusion.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the negotiation. And the negotiation is very dangerous.
I don't feel like Maharaj went through negotiation. Did he?
He what?
Because I'm trying to see also Gurudev, like if he went through these, like he didn't.
Oh, he's.
We go through.
Yeah, we go through them. It's not.
We go through,
Yeah,
yeah.
we go through it. It's not him.
Usually, like the people who are gonna die also go through, but he didn't.
No,
He's liberated.
no, not. Yeah.
What was delusion? What was delusion?
Delusion is confusion. It's just seeing things for. Maybe when Prabhupada left, the delusion was thinking that, well, this process was nice when he was here, but it's not going to go on anymore. It's a lack of following instructions. And but alrighty, it's 6 o'clock. Jai Vanchakapa Jivishcha Kripa Sindhu Veva Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Anantakoi Vaishnavindiki Jai
Nagapatni Mataji ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai Jai Shri Prabhupada.